So please welcome Representative Glen Bradley.
Thank all of you for coming here tonight. It's a very important occasion. Good evening, freedom fighters.
Good evening.
It's a great honor to come here tonight, not only to introduce the most important American in generations, but also to address you, the last best hope for the future of North Carolina and the United States. We stand today on the precipice of either a great tragedy or a great victory, and while the political momentum of decades is pushing us and working us into the abyss, your presence here tonight signals a new hope for America and for future generations to come. To know the blessings of liberty in the United States, we have seen and we continue to see that there is no real hope in the Democratic Party, and that there is no real hope in the Republican Party. Whether in knowledge or in ignorance, despite our current crisis, they have continued in the policies and the practices that have bankrupted a generation, both morally and economically. The press, who have traditionally served as the watchdog of a free society, have failed us. They have given over to commercial interests which care more about shaping opinion than they do about reporting the hard news that serves to inform the electorate.
That's right.
And those same commercial interests that have dominated the halls of Congress and our state legislatures now for over a century. Powerful corporate interests broker power and influence in chunks of $100,000 and one re-election at a time. Not long ago, that was simply the way it was and the way it would always be. But something has changed. We are here tonight because finally there is real hope for the future of America. And for once, for the first time in a lifetime, liberty is on the rise again. Dawn has come, and we stand on the edge of a new day in America. I remember learning the Constitution in school. I think it was around the 7th grade when we learned about the founders' vision of liberty and the Constitution that was intended to protect it. I remember, even at that age, I think it was in 1986, looking at the Constitution and looking at the government and wondering, what's going on here? This doesn't look anything like the government that's described in the Constitution. And so I became a political loner. I was that guy who always thought that the government did too much, had too much power, exercised too much control over our lives, and put way, way too many people into prison. I refused to join any party, and I refused to get involved as though participating was an act of endorsement for a system that I saw as hopelessly corrupt and utterly irredeemable. When I voted for the one I thought likely to do the least amount of damage in the hopes of at least slowing our march to totalitarianism. Yes, I'm ashamed to say that I was apathetic and I did vote for the lesser of two evils. But all of that changed in 2007 when I learned about the enigmatic congressman from Texas, Dr. Ron Paul. I had always thought that it was impossible to have any impact on politics unless you were bought and sold by the special interests, and that nobody who truly stood for the Constitution had any chance at elective office because the people were too trapped in what America had become rather than what America was supposed to be. I mourned for the loss of the nation that I loved and that I had served in the United States Marine Corps, and I had just about lost all hope in March of 2007 when a friend on an Appleseed bulletin board suggested that with my political philosophy, I really ought to check out this guy running for president named Ron Paul. That's exactly what I did. I learned that there really was someone out there who stood for liberty, who stood on the Constitution, and who stood up for the nation that our founders intended. I learned that his commitment to the principles of freedom and a Republican form of government weren't just talk, but they were backed up by 30 years of a rock-solid voting record. But more than that, I learned about a brilliant man with an unimpeachable understanding of economics and with the courage to stand up against all odds. Ron Paul inspired me to drop my life and to devote myself to his presidential campaign. Following his advice, I, for the first time in my life, changed my registration from unaffiliated to register as a Republican and became active at my county level. I helped to canvass South Carolina, Alabama, and my own home state of North Carolina. I met hundreds, thousands of Americans who truly believe that our nation has lost her way and were willing to sacrifice, to do whatever it took to win back the America which once inspired a whole planet to greatness. And finally, I knew that I was no longer alone. After the campaign and after the Rally for the Republic, I went back home and further took Ron Paul's advice on being active in the party. I ran for and won the vice chairmanship of my county Republican Party. Working there to spread the ideals of liberty and government that obeys the Constitution, the next year I ran for North Carolina State House. We were outspent 7-1. We handed out thousands of U.S. constitutions, and we won a victory that was considered impossible by everyone, even in 2012. On a campaign of restoring the constitutional order, and we won because of the movement that Congressman Paul has re-energized in America, and because of people just like you, who responded to the message of constitutional liberty and who were unafraid to stand up and to make a difference in the world around them. We have come a very long way since 2007, but we still have a long way to go. The massive ship of state is slowly starting to turn, but the movement to restore liberty to the shores of America is just getting underway. North Carolina was once known as the state that was first in freedom, and in the hopes of reclaiming that title, it is my hope that out from among this very crowd, there will be legislators, congressmen, senators, and maybe even a governor or a president of the United States. Already, in counties across the state, establishment structures are falling to a new renaissance of American enlightenment as freedom fighters are taking over their local Republican parties and preparing the way to change the course of history in 2012. Every bit of that will depend on you. Whether we sit by and watch our nation continue its descent into tyranny, or we keep turning our state and our nation back to the course of constitutional liberty, is now entirely in your hands. Every one of us has a part to play. You must become a tireless advocate for liberty. You must help to educate your peers and everyone around you as to what a constitutional government actually looks like, why it's better, and how it's actually possible to achieve it in our lifetimes. All it takes is one spark of inspiration to change a life, and maybe to change a whole world. Will you be that spark igniting brush fires of liberty everywhere you go? History will remember this period of time as either the era in which America collapsed and liberty died, or it will remember this period as the era when America stood up in strength with bravery and took our freedom back from the special interests, from the establishment politicians, from the status quo, and from the Federal Reserve. Today will either mark our descent into tyranny or our rising up to the challenge of liberty. Which history will you leave to our future generations? With that, and with no further ado, it is my humble pleasure and great honor to introduce to you the man who inspired me to better things, who has inspired a whole new generation to American greatness, and who has reignited the spark of liberty in the land which saw its birth. The man who made all of this possible, Congressman Dr. Ron Paul.